Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. I hope things are going well for you. In recording this sort of maybe one or two part episode, don't know how it's going to be, if I can easily put them together with my limited editing knowledge. I kept twice. I had crash the desktop on the autosave, right, changing over to September here. So I the last version, I stopped the recording right then, and then I've gone back and I played it through without, because I'm thinking that the recording software, because it's taking up a lot of resources, is taking something that maybe wouldn't crash and cause it to crash. So I didn't feel like playing through with it a third time and seeing if it worked or not. I did clear out the two bad saves on it with this, so I did it, replayed that, well, the end of August there again. And so we're picking up now. I made all the same decisions, I think. I may have dropped the ICs into a few different locations, but they're basically all the same, as you saw in that last. So there's a little bit of hiccup. So either this will be a two-parter day, or I'll put these together, not quite sure. One way or another. But welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron. We'll pick up from there, because then I didn't have the crash when I didn't have my recording software running while making the episode. So I don't know whether it was just the luck of the draw that it didn't crash this last time, or whether the extra resources taken up affected things. Okay. Reich. What? Kampfter essay. This is the Berlin sort of national games. They're sort of battle games. I once had that translated for me. It wasn't making sense in anything in Google Translate. Sort of the best of the essays here, because as we saw in some of the other things, they were doing all these various local events, but this is sort of the national event. This is the sports stadium made for the Olympics here. As you can see, the huge, big, open, flat field. This is at least the sort of the standard Olympic stadium thing that's actually lower than what's here, sort of a real massive, big complex. And the essay filled that up with a big essay sports day. So some infantry unit training happened, cost us some supplies. The Grand Prix of Germany, basically, is what it is, at the Nürburgring. I know I was, well, to me, somewhat, I guess, first really introduced with the Nürburgring on the TV show Top Gear. I do, live in America, watch the British driving show, car driving show. So the Germans were doing all these various races. You can see the different countries that participated in it. So this will help our automotive industry develop. And it's just to show that there was a lot going on in Germany at this time. It wasn't just preparations for the war. It wasn't the gloomy, oppressive, grinding famine and other things going on in the Soviet Union or some of these other things. Not to say that, that makes Germany all right or the Nazis good, no. But it really was still a vibrant society, and particularly for those that the New Order looked favorably upon. Those people that were getting with the right people and getting with the program. It was going well for them. I mean, everybody else, no, but for them it was going well at this time in 1937. Okay, well, now that we've had the Hindenburg disaster, we have a couple of choices here. The Graf Zeppelin the Germans before the Hindenburg disaster, they knew the problems with hydrogen as a lift medium for Zeppelins and blimps as well. My understanding, the primary source for helium, the other, not as good, and this is, hydrogen I think is about the best lift gas that we know of. Some scientist person here might know more, but it has the best lift properties. Helium is not as good, meaning for the amount of volume taken up, and hydrogen will lift, is lighter, so it will lift more than the same volume in helium. The Graf Zeppelin was built and designed to be a helium lift vessel, not a hydrogen lift vessel. And at this time, the primary source for helium was the United States. The United States had an embargo, particularly for Germany, but I'm not sure what other countries they could export helium to. And they put this on either during the First World War or shortly thereafter, not exactly sure. To my understanding, it's still, the ban on exporting helium is still on today. No one's taken it off the books. And they did this because Germany was using hydrogen Zeppelins to bomb, particularly noted that I know of at least, Britain, London. I presume they might have also bombed Paris or whatever, but I'm not sure about that. And they saw it as a war implement, so it was banned from use. So Germany did the Hindenburg in hydrogen and this reinforcement. But they had already been looking at trying to get helium for their thing. So we can keep working. Cost us auto supplies or rare events. Some supplies. Yeah, we'll do this. We'll keep going on. Well, what Germany does is they send Dr. Hugo Eckener. He's the main developer, following off from Graf von Zeppelin, of the Hindenburg and the Graf von Zeppelin to the United States, and there he is meeting with Roosevelt to lobby the U.S. to allow us, Germany, to buy helium. Unfortunately, the U.S. government does not sell Germany any helium for these vessels. Now, you may think it's silly that the U.S. is continuing. I mean, to this day, if it still is as I understand, somebody may find out that I'm incorrect about that they still have the ban on selling it. But at the time, you may think it was silly because they weren't going to be using Zeppelins to bomb London because they had some sort of aircraft that would be able to get up high enough. And if you're so super duper high, how are you going to target anything anyways? That it wouldn't be useful. Well, there are other uses for helium, and I don't know all of them, but I do know that the U.S. developed, particularly after the start of the Second World War, a massive blimp program. Difference between, just for those of you who don't know, I'm sorry if everyone already knows it, but a Zeppelin is a type of dirigible, meaning, as you saw in the previous photo, it has a skeleton inside of it, a frame, a skeleton inside of the balloon, if you will, up in there. Where a blimp is just a big gas bag. And, well, and as we can see, barrage balloons that Britain puts up all over London, and Germany does some too, that they put up these balloons to try to ensnare low-flying aircraft. That's a war use, and if you put up hydrogen barrage balloons, that you can turn into big flaming things. And trust me, when you're shooting a lot of ack up in the air, it goes up and explodes, This is one reason why all of the gunners wore helmets. It wasn't to stop bullets, obviously, because no one's shooting bullets at you. And it wasn't really even to protect against attacks from the air, meaning like bombs or even theoretically machine guns or something strafing you on the ground. Its primary purpose is all that flak was going up there and blowing up and creating a lot of little fragments, and all those fragments are going to come down. Some of them will be their trajectory will be straight down at you, because it means they burst and go in all directions. Other parts will just keep going in other directions, but eventually gravity takes over and it falls down, and it can kill you. Well, having obviously your most vulnerable spot is on your head, and it's all coming out of the sky. It can, stop the lighter fragments, and even if you're still hit by it somewhere else in your body, it could be just a, quote the movies, a minor flesh wound or something, and not necessarily fatal, where the same impact on your head would have been fatal. So, having them up there with helium, they get punctured, they'll lose their helium and drift down. They get punctured with a red hot piece of flak metal going around and light that helium up. That's a nice big fireball that could, all kinds of not good stuff happening with that. Excuse me. So there was that war element. The helium could be put to use to, like I was saying, the U.S. had a major blimp operation that they used on both coasts to look for submarines, because they can get up there and loiter. They can just get up there. They got engines. They got to be good weather. They're not foul weather uses, but they can get up there. They got engines to direct them where they're going around in the good weather. But they can just sit up there, and so long as they're up there and they got a few guys with binoculars, they will spot submarines very effectively, even those that are just slightly below the water, using the periscopes, because depending on the condition of the water, it does vary, but they'll generally create shadows down there, and if you're looking down at them, they'll see them really good, and they're up there and they're moving slowly, so they'll see them, and when they sort of kind of see them, they'll radio in and call it. The U.S. did put some depth charge type bombs on them so that the blimps could attack them, but I don't think they were very effective. Meaning, I think the submarine could see them and dive and get out of the way. But even if the submarines spot the blimps, they've got to go down they got to get down low enough and stay down there. Eventually they'll run out of air, and they'll eventually run out of battery power. So they just have to stay up there, call in the air power, which would come in quick but can only be there short times, and call in naval vessels. But now, of course, naval vessels are looking over the the horizon of their ship, where these guys are bringing a few more, and they can just stay up there, which keeps the subs from operating in that area. And they've got to try to get away from them, or they're eventually going to be put out of service because they'll run out of air. And you may say they come up at night. Well, they've already got the zone flooded with surface warfare vessels, and if it's a nice night, the blimps will still be up there looking for them, so that they were an effective suppressive submarine capability. Now, Germany, even if it had blimps with helium, isn't going to be able to do that along the English Channel with the British able to fly them over. But operating in the Baltic and around here against the Soviet subs potentially, getting up high up here and loitering, looking for day and the long days and the long nights, looking for convoys, and trying to stay well out of the range of any aircraft gun, but just going up there. Hey, reported convoy, it's scattering, we're following, try to vector in. They would have their uses, and if you've watched my previous series with Germany breaking out into the Indian Ocean, they would be useful as blimps, or Zeppelins would have been useful as submarine spotting in the proper weather at the proper conditions, where you don't have, because if you've secured some of these islands, there's going to, and this coastline, there's going to be no way, unless they're moving carriers There's going to be no way to oppose the, okay, the some of the convoys did have one-shot use aircraft that could land in the water, maybe be recovered, maybe not. But the submarines that could be stalking the German convoys or the Italian convoys are going to have no way to really counteract the blimps or zeppelins from getting up there, hanging high, and out of any aircraft gun, and suppressing their activities while they're there. So they would have been perfect to use. So that's sort of the military reason why the U.S. has, at this time, not selling helium. So, to continue with the Graf. Zeppelin 2, they decide to continue the building it, even though they're not going to use helium. And so that, because it was built, set up dynamically to be able to do it with helium, having it with hydrogen, it could lift even more. So it became a better lifting device. But, and as we will see later in a later event, they very wisely decide not to attempt to use it as a commercial passenger liner, because probably no one would use it, and it would be criminally stupid to try to. And then, of course, if anything ever happened to any passengers after using it as such, what are you thinking, kind of thing. So that's sort of the fate. So this hurts our relation with the U.S. The Horthy Cup, Admiral Miklos Horthy, the regent of the Kingdom of Hungary, which doesn't have a kingdom. Of course, it doesn't have, other than the water polo players, doesn't have a navy. So I guess there's a Danube river flotilla. But an admiral in charge of a landlocked kingdom without a king was a big fan of water polo, major fan. And so he had the Horthy Cup international. You can see the nations there: Austria, Germany, Belgium, Yugoslavia, France, Hungary, yeah, not the royal symbol, of course, all participated in the thing. So we don't see it, but Austria has invented or similar thing that helps them relations with all those countries. Box sport, just another interesting thing we saw earlier with Max Schmeling. This is interesting, just another one of the publications promoting up the various German boxing competition. This goes along with just general sports at the time, but of course the Nazis are trying to make it out with various National Socialist uses, so it's interesting. Okay, air bases in northern Germany. Yes, we want those. There's number 2 of those. Syria. Yeah. Gotta remember, everybody. Get them all up to the top. So that will help even more. So we're now down to 4.23 ICs to build an IC. And give them supplies for money. Okay. If you save up that money, Denmark will take it back later on. Okay. Lithuania is no longer. Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce what the STG is an abbreviation for. This is the Marine Technology Society. That's their building in Berlin, going back to the old Kaiser days. Well, as part of the continuing National Socialization of Germany, it is brought under the NSBDT, National Socialist Association of German Technology, under Dr. Fritz Tolt there, who's also of course in charge of the organization TOTE, but he's also under this. So now it's no longer an independent organization that had been supported, or what's the term? Official patron had been the Kaiser, including during the time that he was in exile. It is now moved in under the umbrella of this other National Socialist Technical Association, that, it's the General Technical Association, but managing all of it, so it's brought under that instead of allowing to be independent, and which is under TOS. So it's organized up. We can decide not to, or we can support the continued resources to a tune of 1,000 supplies, which is a bunch and not a huge amount, but it'll get us a little bit down the list on some of these I'm basing this on, I found an article in German on the web about this organization at this time and what they were researching. Some of it's here. But I translated with Google Translate, and I think I got more or less, so I started base what they were researching on and helped this out. So that's good, we'll do that. Okay, Great Hong Kong Typhoon, yes. I don't know if any of you have ever read the book or watched the TV series by James Clavell, the book, or two of them, Noble House and Taipan. I've read both and seen the series way back when they were on television. This area, the beginning of the modern one, and I think that's Taipan is the modern one, or is that Noble House? I forget which one. Starts out with a typhoon hitting Hong Kong, and then later there's a second one in there. So this area does get hit by a lot of typhoons. So 11,000 people died in Hong Kong, but only 21 in Macau. I wonder if that just represents geographical differences or fewer people. I don't know. Disasters happen around the world. Alright, we're in a big deficit. So now we're still at 423. Okay. Now we also, with that, we're gonna do more ICs still, because we're doing ICs until 38 hits. Just ICs until 38 hits. And then as 38 goes along, we're going to start converting over to other units, including, as Herman wants, air units, but I'm not going to go exclusive on anything. Primarily because it takes a while, like as you see that we built up a lot of practicals, so that it lowers, production costs on factories. Well, if we just start, which this obviously will help us gain practicals and fighters, of course. But if we just start producing air and then later shift everything over to ground forces, and then shift over to naval or whatever, or shift from infantry to armor or whatever, you don't build up the practicals. So it's better to get the ball rolling and have it divided up between the different, and move it over. So as once 38 comes along in February, and as more and more of these factories go away, we will be having more and more of a shift over, as expanding our unit production. Okay, the Hossbach Memorandum. It was a meeting between Adolf Hitler and his military leadership and foreign policy, setting the future plans. This is where he really tells them where he's going to go. And Hitler wanted a full-scale European war with Britain and France somewhere between 1941 lasting through to 44-45 is what he thought. And that's very much along my understanding is the war was going to start somewhere between 41 and 42. That's when he was really planning. And so all the builders of weaponry, whether it is the ships or aircraft or ground troops, all had this sort of steady build-up program that was completely thrown off with the war starting in late 39. So basically 2 years early, they start the war. And I've often thought about, though I'm not going to do it on this playthrough, just because of various B-ice concerns that I have, black ice concerns, already over, what happens when you start the war with the Soviet Union or some of these other operations, having them happen too late. So I'm not going to start that, but we might not be starting it until 40 like we did last time. We will see how I feel at late 39, whether I'm going to put it off to 40. Very early 40, but to start the war. So that was the plan. Poland was supposed to be just a little training war, sort of like what Ethiopia was to Italy. That's what Hitler wanted. So the party gains more organization as it takes control of the military and industrial complex, even more so. Okay, air bases for West Germany. Yes, we will go with this. We're going to continue with all of these because we will need them, I do believe. And if not every last one of them, enough of them, I'll be grateful to have them, even with their costs. Those will disappear in a day, so we need to go over. A few more. Cruises, you see, I like putting them along rivers just for the fun of it. Most of the ones with ICs, we've already got either something building or they're filled up. Okay. It's not enough maybe, but it's going to be this next. As you can see, we're building lots and lots of ICs, but we have the practicals, so the cost is low. That one. There we go. House. Okay. Die Front. This is a National Socialist Swiss publication, basically a newspaper. Promoting up them, but as you can, they use that Swiss cross and mace, so they get a vet proving their things. And this is, I thought, also interesting. I really think they went off the SS name and came up with Salschutz. Basically, as they say, it's a room protection. Sal is basically French for room. I think Swiss German had more French influence than German did. And whether this would have turned out had they gotten power to be as dedicated and otherwise nasty as the SS was in Germany or not, at this point they're just sort of an elite guard, not really a terror organization at this time. Okay. SS Berghausen Bayeritzsnil. Found this little thing. The SS actually, my understanding, bought well, not little, this house or small hotel or whatever it is. Up, you can see that's them sitting on the railing here, up high in the Alps. Um, at this time, as purely there's their swimming pool for it, a vacation home for the SS to come to, and not even necessarily like the high ups. It was, I don't know the average rank that was allowed to come up and use it. Don't know whether they paid for it or went through some sort of rotation system, but they definitely had this as just a, sort of a SS retreat. You see the flag. These are all pictures from the period, so the SS is spending some of our supplies making itself cool little pad up in the mountains. Okay. The Askari veterans down here in Tanganyika. They served very reliably under the Germans up until and through World War I. Letter von Vobeck commanding them. They did very well. They were actually highest paid Askaris in the time period. Well, the first German hyperinflation in Weimar basically destroyed the ability for Germany to make payments in other currencies, and the hyperinflation German Weimar Mark, whatever, whether it was a Reich Mark or Deutsche Mark or Deutsche Mark, at the time was basically worthless, so they didn't really ever pay out their pensions. Now this event was inspired by me, or for me, when I was reading about the subject. What happened is the Federal Republic of Germany, after World War II at some point, realized that they had an obligation to these men who had served them. And so they sent down a commission down there to pay off all the surviving veterans a pension that were still in old Tanganyika there. And they went down there, and sort of the interesting story is they went in there, I guess announced in newspapers or on the radio or whatever that they were going to be doing this. And a bunch of the Askari showed up. Some of them had paperwork still, old paperwork from that they were in. Some had, bits and pieces of the uniform left, badges or whatever, and showed up. A bunch of them didn't have any paperwork. They were sort of discussing on how to figure out, were all these people legitimate claimants, because most of them, didn't have paperwork. The Germans didn't, the Federal Republic, after going from the Kaiser Reich to the Weimar government through the National Socialist government to them, they didn't have any paperwork saying who was an Askari. So one of the guys came up with an idea is they went out and bought a bunch of brooms, and then they would take them into one at a time or a few at a time or whatever. Would take them into a room, and they would have they would hand them brooms, and then in German give them drill commands, because although the Askaris basically never were taught or knew any German, but they were taught to drill, forward march, right face, left face, about face, and all that stuff. They learned it, whether they really knew what the words meant or not, but they learned the commands in German that the British officers would give them. So they started to, and all the old guys were able to immediately, and basically my understanding, most all or all of them that they went through were able to know, and no one had given them any forewarning, and there weren't, they sort of made sure that it wasn't some huge group that they could, all get it to, see what monkey see, monkey do, just because the guy standing there was going to sort of react to it. That's why it was like sort of small groups or one at a time. And they went through, and they knew the drill in German. And so the Askaris that served later in Tanzania as part of the British Empire wouldn't have known the commands in German, because they were never taught. And I'm sure the old veteran Askaris, who a bunch of them did move over at least for a while, while they were still young enough or whatever, over to the British service. But they didn't teach the other guys. They all knew, and that's how they determined who was a true Askari. And then at that point, it was just a lump sum payment to the survivors. You know, this was late 1940, very early 1950. I forget the year, but it was right around there that they went off and paid off all the remaining World War I veterans. There. So, but I'm going down. This is alt history with Tanganyika, not Third Reich events. This is, we've supported the Colonial Veterans Association heavily. I'm sort of, you got the opportunity to support it more heavily than they did historically. We've also taken the opportunity to get this event. You've had to have supported the Reich Colonial Bund, the group that wanted to retake its colonies. Not necessarily, a lot of them were members were war veterans and their, you know, colonial war veterans and their children, but there were also many other Germans supporting this. So, but we supported that organization heavily to get into this. So since we've done that, I'm going down the thought processes. Okay, well, these organizations who want to ingratiate themselves back with their former allies and thinking they're going to get back there someday, and the one place where they had been very successful and they had maintained their army until the end, particularly though theoretically this could also be paying off the veterans from Cameroon, South Africa, but what currently we're looking at is Tanganyika, is that they want to get back in there, and this would also be a way to put in some, you know, National Socialist German people and, you know, government commissioners to go pay off these veterans, collect the names, you know, theoretically have the same brainwave of drilling them, and but get their names, their addresses, and where to send the payments to, so that if whether you're setting up a spy network or whether when you show back up, you sort of know where your potential friends are and you've been paying them. So you can say, you know, this bottom, give money to subhumans, never. Well, that's sort of what I think the Nazis would view them as such, and not my viewing of them, of course. Well, we can pay them, which is, I'm sort of taking it as an intuitive, smart move by a few people within this organization. And it costs a lot of money, you know, but it's also going to cost you, this is sort of the initial lump sum payment, but there's going to be yearly payments after this if you take this, that you're going to have to go down there and spend your foreign currency. Now, as you see, I've got a 5,000. I built it up. A lot of players don't build up large currency reserves, so this could be painful. Depends on how you play it. Because if you automate your trade, a lot of times you won't get that. So, if you want to get support in your former colonies, you do this, and which will set you up. While peace remains, you will continue to support us. Pay Askari pensions yearly, so we're going to do that. So that's my justification for the event. It's an alt history thing, like I was talking about before, alt history of what you could do with Spain going, the Republicans winning. This is an alt history that I look at it as a reasonable, even in a National Socialist regime, if they, whether it's an enlightened view or a cynical view of getting support for their aims of regaining the colonies. I think it's something that is a reasonable alt history. So, that's sort of what we're going. Okay, now this is I believe a new revolver held event. Luftkriegsschulen. Okay, formation of the German air arm was openly announced on February 35, Reich Marshal. Okay, revolver held, if you're listening to this, you made a mistake here. It was not formed by Reich Marshal Hermann Goering. Maybe Field Marshal Hermann Goering, maybe Marshal Hermann Goering, but he was not Reich Marshal yet. I may post this for. You should use, and anybody who's planning on making a mod, you should use their title as current to the events, not what they eventually become. So that's my philosophy on these things. Because yes, he became Reich Marshal Hermann Goering, but he was just forget whether it was, I think it was Field Marshal Hermann Goering, well, not in 35, it wasn't even 35, it was a Field Marshal. I have to look up. So I think we have the event coming up here that makes it the Field Marshal here. So he was yet to be there, but Reich Marshal happens only after the fall of France. Okay, the growth of Luftwaffe conflicts. Okay. Basically, put in a lot of resources, money, lots of money. Gain a bunch of officers, lose some manpower. Yeah. Well, we're going to go for it. We could use the officers. We can use the various improvements, so we'll go for that. Okay, and let's see here. Particularly, lots of money. Yeah. Okay, we're going to end this episode. Let's take a quick look. They're still not able to reconnect their territory. Ooh, look at this. Okay, we're here. Obviously, the Deutschland. Under Hansen, don't know who he was. The Nationalists have some air power up there striking. A bunch of air power there. Looks like 9 fighter vessels, or planes, or squadrons, or whatever. Maybe some surface, but the liners, some of the vessels are supporting this naval invasion of Ibiza. The Republicans want to get back to the hot girls in Ibiza. Okay, so that's what's going on in Spain, Japan. Now I put all these on normal, which the question is, should they be put on hard, either China and or Japan? I think I've had better results with both of them on hard, both China and Japan, meaning Japan is a bit stronger, China is also a bit stronger, but Japan just enough stronger to come in and crush them. But we'll see how this goes, because they've only they've expanded further in here, but this is all they've done so far. They've not moved in with any other naval invasions. Okay, so that's the state of the world. We'll see you next episode. Thanks a lot for viewing. Please, again, like these videos, post comments. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.